Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, our automotive enthusiast friends, no matter where you are in this big blue marble that we call Earth, you have done it once again. That's right, you pushed play on yet another...
Kevin, another unbelievably mind-blowing episode of V8 Radio.
Unbelievably mind-blowing. That's a lot.
We're a lot.
Well, you got that right. So this is the V8 Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oeste, joined as always by our esteemed co-host, Mr. Mike Clarke.
And by golly, we are in studio today.
We are in Garage Studio. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in full swing. So if you are a loyal listener to the show, you know that Mr. Q-Ball is a full-time employee of the V8 Speed and Resto Shop and V8 Radio. But works remotely and once a month?
Generally, yes.
Once a month. Notice I pay attention. Generally, once a month, he magically appears on site for a staff meeting or a visit or something, and that's where you're at now.
It is where I'm at now. So we came out this week. And this happens to be the weekend of the annual V8 Speed and Resto holiday party, which I'm staying a few extra days so I can attend, and my lovely wife Jennifer is coming down to attend as well.
That's nice.
It is nice. It's going to be great. My first one.
This is your first holiday party?
Yes.
Right on. So where you worked before, they didn't believe, huh?
My first V8 SR holiday party, sir.
Yeah, that's different. All right. Well, before we get too festive, we like to start every one of these podcasts with an automotive trivia question.
Hey, how about that?
Have you prepared a trivia question?
Indeed.
Well, we like to throw the question out at the beginning of the show, and then we reveal the answer at the end, inviting you to be an at-home player. You can even write it down if you want.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. So, Kevin, on our last episode, you showed me a real kindness, and you gave me a real sweet softball question that even a knucklehead like me was able to get right away. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to return the favor. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to ask you, and you're going to get this immediately, and I know you are, and probably most of our listeners are, but what was the first car to break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier in NASCAR? And as a bonus, who was the driver?
Well, the 200-mile-an-hour barrier was a big one, and I think that's kind of where the super speedway concept came from, because as they started to create the high bank turns to be able to keep cars on the track and go faster. And there's a lot of different cars that got closer on some of the flatter tracks, but I think you really needed that banked super speedway, which tended to lend itself, if you look at the names of some of the cars that were, competing in NASCAR at the time, they were named after certain tracks. Like the Dodge Daytona would be a good one, and the Plymouth Superbird leading to the super speedway. And what I believe to be true, the first car that cracked the 200-mile-an-hour barrier was the 426 Hemi-powered Dodge Daytona, driven by Junior Johnson. And I can't remember if it was Buddy Baker or Junior Johnson, but I'm going to say it was Junior Johnson.
All right. Final answer?
Yes, that is the final answer.
Well, let's not forget about didn't they have the Torino Talladega as well?
Yeah, it didn't do it.
Didn't do it?
It wasn't the first.
No? Okay.
I know pretty solidly that it was a Hemi-powered Mopar with a nose cone and a giant spoiler.
Yeah, I'm trying to do your Jedi mind trick on you, and it's just not working.
That one ain't going to work.
No, it's not. All right, so final answer, duly noted, sir, and we'll find out at the end of the show how right or wrong you may be.
I could be 100% wrong. Okay, so I have a question for you.
Talk to me.
In what year, or I just should say what year, was laminated safety glass made mandatory for vehicles in the United States?
Ooh, that is a great question, because that is quite a great safety upgrade that came on automobiles. So before the advent of laminated safety glass, if you got into a head-on collision and somebody, or even if something impacted the windshield of your car, it was just turning that windshield into glass shards, just going right into you, or God forbid you put your head through it during a frontal collision, you're in pretty bad shape.
Yep, shattered like a plate.
So, exactly. So, safety glass used plastic laminate between panes of glass. So, when something does impact it, that plastic holds everything together and prevents those sharp shards from going everywhere. So, in what year was it mandatory in automobiles? We're going to say... 1967.
All right.
1967.
The default year for technical trivia question answers, because it's the year of your GTO. Do you know that that's a connection there?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of safety features in the 67 GTO over the 66.
This was my point, yeah.
How about that?
There it becomes the default answer.
There it becomes the de facto answer, folks.
All right, 1967. Is that the final answer?
Final answer, sir.
All right, well, duly noted, and the answers will be revealed at the end of the show, and everybody will cheer joyously upon either learning or reaffirming the fact that they already knew the answer to these riveting trivia questions.
I can't wait.
Yeah. All right. So it's been still hammer down, busy all year. Our last adventure that we promised we would talk about on this show was the 2023 Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals.
What a show that was. My word, my feet are still barking at me from all that. But it was just another knock out of the park from Bob Ashton and company for this 2023 MCACN show. Just unbelievable. Just how creative he gets with the displays that he has. And it's never the same show twice.
No, it's not. And it was interesting this year. Logged on one of the days of the weekend, I logged just about 20,000 steps in the same room.
Good Lord. That's a lot of stepping, my friend.
Yeah, what was there, 550 cars or something?
Something like that, yeah.
530, something like that. And, I tell people that it's not just 530 cars. It's the right cars. It's great cars.
Great cars, for sure.
And they, as you mentioned, they bring them out in different theme displays that are invitationals. So what people need to realize is that they're planning these theme displays sometimes 2 years in advance.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not because it's that hard to physically put together and park the cars in a circle. It's because somebody gets an idea for a type of car or a theme, and then they got to find those cars.
And they got to convince the owners to bring those cars.
Yeah. Those cars might not exist.
That's true.
They might go down the path and go, well, we wanted to have, the variety of right-hand drive Hemi Superbirds that were all painted green built in the world, and it turns out there are none.
They're all gone.
Well, I don't think there ever was a right-hand drive.
Any, right.
That'd be interesting. Mm-hmm. Would a right-hand drive Superbird do left-hand turns in NASCAR?
Would it? Interesting.
Tune in next time.
Deep thoughts.
So, was there anything of those theme displays that really stood out to you this year that you thought was pretty neat?
Gosh, yeah, I liked all the Boss displays. We had the Boss 302s, Boss 351s, Boss 429s out there this year, all kind of corralled together. That was pretty cool. I know what display you really dug.
Which one was that?
That would be the big Buick display.
That was remarkable. The big Buick display. Well, backing up to that Boss display, I think he titled it "Who's the Boss?"
Correct.
And it was not just Mustangs. They had the Boss Bronco there.
Oh, they did, yes.
And just that whole assortment. And the 1971 Boss 302 prototype car, which never went into production. Mm-hmm. So 71, you could only get a Boss 351. You couldn't get a 429, and there was no 71 302 car. But the original, concept was there. It was unreal.
It is unreal.
The Buick display was insane. It was a tribute to full-size, big-body Buicks, so not Skylarks or GSs or GSXs or even the later Grand Nationals or anything. But it was from the 60s, and these are full-size family cars that individuals had usually ordered special with high-performance equipment on them. And what we're talking about here is like Buick 425 powered dual quad 4-speed cars that really weren't offered with that stuff.
Right.
Eventually they were offered with those by 65 and 66 or so. But there was the one that really caught my eye was a 63 Wildcat Sport Coupe with a 425 dual quads 4-speed in red, white top, white interior. Mm-hmm. The Buick road wheels with an argent painted center insert, and just an amazing restoration. And it's interesting going back because we did a video of that gentleman who brought that car out, Colonel Andy Starr, retired USMC. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he pointed out is that the dual quads and the wheels were dealer add-ons.
Really?
Yeah. So they didn't, it wasn't factory built. It had a factory 425, but it didn't have the quads and the wheels. The wheels were not available when the car hit the street.
That's right.
But they were being displayed at one of the auto shows on a later 63/64 car.
Right.
So he went back, whoever owned it, went back to their Buick dealer and said, let's upgrade this thing. So dealer installed kind of day two style options.
Yeah. Factory day two, sort of.
Factory produced parts, dealer installed, and at the correct time period.
Correct.
So
that thing was really special.
Yeah.
I mean, heavens to Betsy. What's really cool too is, I mean, you've been a Buick guy since you were a little kid, and a good friend of yours has a car that would have been right at home in that display.
For sure.
But for untold reasons, wasn't able to bring it out. And tell us about that.
The rest of the corral was similarly equipped 4-speed cars, and there were some Rivieras. They didn't have any 4-speed Rivieras because none of those were ever made, but dual quads and Riviera GSs and a lot of Wildcats. And there was a LeSabre there, which was not as fancy as the Wildcat, so a lighter weight version. So, almost like a Copo equivalent of a Chevrolet. A stripper model, 300 pounds lighter than a Wildcat, but still had the quads and a 4-speed. But my buddy his dad bought a 63 Wildcat convertible 425 4-speed car. And it's triple white top, white interior, white exterior.
Beautiful.
Road wheels.
Yeah.
It's got 66,000 miles on it now, I think. And it's amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, a true survivor.
And what they're saying that there might have been 8 of those made, 7 or 8 of them.
Man.
And it was unfortunate that he couldn't get it out. He had his own reasons for not having it there, but
it would have been the star of that display.
It would have been leading the charge, yeah. But that red car really, the one that
it was no slouch.
That was my pick of the show.
That's right, it was.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they actually give me a piece of paper that says, this is the Kevin Oeste pick of the show, for whatever reason.
Suitable for framing or wrapping fish.
Yes. Well, it was nice because the owner was very happy about that. He was appreciative of it. And my strategy on doing these pick awards is that I was completely turned upside down by that car. But that's the type of car that's not going to get recognition everywhere it goes, especially at that particular show, because, you got original ZL1 Camaros and 69 Firebird Trans Ams.
Right.
There's
it's not a flashy muscle car.
No, and there are higher profile muscle cars on display at that event. So it kind of flies under the radar, but it certainly didn't deserve to. It deserved all the glory, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Yeah,
agreed. I'm a believer now in those cars.
You need to drive one, man.
Well, get your buddy on the phone. We're going to go to Chicago. We're going to drive it.
I drove that white convertible, and what was cool about it is being a full-size, first of all, any giant full-size 4-speed car is fun. It's a different dynamic.
Sure.
When you are between gears and you step on the clutch and you grab, second, and you get off the clutch and lean on it, these things make a ton of torque. So they want to go, but there's so much land mass you're moving, that the whole world shifts, from the inertia. And it's a different kind of driving experience. But the transmission in those, so Buick didn't have a 4-speed that was capable of standing up to that thing on the assembly line in their parts bin. So the transmission, I believe, is like a Corvette derivative.
Really?
Yeah. And it's got a weird shifter that points forward coming up out of the console.
Yeah, that's right. It does.
So you don't, in a typical manual transmission car, even on a side shift where the linkage attaches to the side of the transmission, but definitely on, like today's modern top loader transmissions, if you will, where the shifter goes straight down into the box. In those cases, the pivot ball of the shifter is directly below your hand. So when you're in neutral, the shifter's straight up and down, and your first gear is going to be X degrees forward, and then your second gear might be the same distance the other direction off of center. However, on this Buick, if your hand is in neutral and you drew a straight line down to the earth, the shifter ball, the pivot ball, is probably 3 inches back behind where your hand is. So it's almost like a big lever.
Sure.
Because it's a different kind of thing.
Such an odd angle.
Weird angle. Yeah. And what it does is it gets your whole upper body involved as you move this thing. You know, and it's not that it necessarily has so much more travel. It's not like a long throw shifter, but it like driving a truck, but it's got a different arc of motion. Because if you think about it, by leaning that stick forward, now first gear is not just forward, it's forward and down.
Right. Yeah. So it's a different geometry.
Yeah. And you know, second would be coming back and up a little bit. So then they're quiet because they're big, giant, luxurious Buicks.
Yes.
And they're very smooth
because they're big, giant, luxurious Buicks,
right? And as you're driving this thing, you know, you're ripping the shifter around. But if you do that to the steering wheel, you're going to be in the ditch because it's super power steering.
Oh, right,
lightweight steering. You know, when you think of a Camaro or a Mustang that's got manual steering, manual brakes, and a 4-speed, you need equal amount of input on all those, which is good. It keeps you from balling the thing up. But the Buick has, you know, toe touch brakes and super lightweight finger steering.
And future view headlights.
Yes, it should have those. But then this action of, you know, ripping that shifter around. So it's a different deal, but it's cool.
That is cool, man. That was, I really enjoy the variety you get at MCACN. I mean, I would have never thought there would be a big Buick display and have it be so well received. I mean, I never knew that there were cool, huge Buicks like that. When you think of a full-size Buick, you think like a 401, bench seat, column shift automatic, and then you're moving. But nothing like, I never knew they had these really cool, high-performance, center console, bucket seat, 4-speed, 425 dual quad cars rolling around out there.
Yeah, they made muscle cars, you know, and again, full-size, you know, Impala SS equivalent type stuff. The one that was really neat was a convertible, and it had the 4-speed console. Yeah. And that one, the console, or the shorty part of it, actually, it was a little bit different than the later version of the shorty, but it had a floating armrest design. So the armrest was kind of in midair with a real light chrome base underneath it. There's details, man. And if these things, for whatever reason, you know, I guess if they were as affordable as Chevys were in the day, and really if they were as strong, meaning Chevys you could beat the crap out of and they didn't break. Buick motors might not have been as robust, you know, so and they were expensive to fix. But if the detail level that the Buicks had was in Chevys, there'd be restoration catalogs full of repro parts of all this stuff that I'm talking about, and people would know it.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point.
But that's kind of the fun of not knowing it and discovering it.
Yeah, for sure. I learned so much every time I go to a muscle car and Corvette National. It's just so much to learn, and you can't just idly walk by and not stop and learn something about a car. I mean, it's not just a show. I mean, it's a real educational experience.
It is. One of the high points for me, and Bob Ashton, you know, referred to this when we had him on, was the unveiling of David Sullivan's dad's 68 Torino GT 428 Cobra Jet car, which was so cool. And when Bob was talking to us ahead of time, I'm certainly familiar with the 68 Torino. I wasn't that familiar with David Sullivan.
Right.
And Bob's like, well, he's an actor, you know, and you'd know him if you see him. And that's true.
Right. Yes.
And he's done bits on like Criminal Minds, and he was in the TV series Justified,
right?
And a lot of stuff, you know. But he's not super recognizable. I mean, I noticed in the different characters he plays, he looks pretty different in each one of those. But at the MCACN show, we got to unveil his family heirloom, and his dad back in '68 bought this Torino GT 428 Cobra Jet car. And it was pretty much of a sleeper. It was black vinyl top, black car, maroon interior. It still kept the maroon GT stripe on the bottom, down the sides. But his dad apparently pulled all the badges off.
Right, right. So people wouldn't know.
So they didn't know it was a 428. And then, of course, the Cobra Jet under the hood. And his dad bought this thing and drove it around and did some street racing with it and whatnot, but eventually had a family. And as David had said in the reveal that, he was expensive.
I understand that completely.
Yeah, so that car became too expensive to drive, and it was a two-door, and now there's a few kids.
Right.
It's not really practical, so it got kind of pushed out into the field. Luckily in Texas, so it didn't disintegrate, but it was kind of worse for the wear over the years. And his dad had kept saying a phrase to him over the years, and his dad unfortunately became ill and wasn't doing well. But his dad kept saying, "Hey, look after the Ford. Take care of the Ford." And David admits that he wasn't able to really give the old Ford the love that it needed until after his dad had passed, at which point he had it restored and then unveiled at the show. But the thing that was interesting to me is that's what my dad used to say.
Really?
Yeah, exactly the same.
Wow.
Hey, look after the Ford. And he was talking about our Galaxy.
Sure.
And he never said, how's the Galaxy or anything. It was just look after the Ford or how's the Ford or take
Right.
It's just the Ford.
Right on.
People don't call them Fords anymore, do they?
No,
They always
they
call
don't.
them
They
the
don't.
Mustang or the Escape or the Mach-E.
Mach-E. Yeah.
So that was interesting, and so we did the unveiling, and he had his family there, his mom and his sister and his brother, and he revealed not only the car, but the fact that this was the very first car show that he'd ever been to.
Man, what a bar to set.
Yeah. And, at first thought, it's like, well, how can you have a guy who grew up for a time period in the back of this Cobra Jet car,
Right.
and never been to a car show?
Right. Or not be a car guy.
Right. And it just turns out that he's a car guy for that car.
Right. Exactly.
And he loved seeing all the stuff at the show, and he just never had the experience, of getting into it as a kid and whatever, but he's sure into it now.
He is all the way into it now. Yeah.
And
My God, that car was so well received. I mean, his whole family was there. His mom was there. His sisters were there. Just to be able to, and they had not seen the car yet finished.
Right.
David had seen it a couple of weeks prior for a photo shoot, but nobody else in the family knew what it looked like. And there was not a dry eye in the house when that cover came off.
No, for sure. And, lots of stories about the car, and the team that did the restoration on it did an amazing job. I mean, that one really looked better than showroom fresh.
It looked great.
And it was
beautiful.
Because you can go different ways with restorations. You can make them like authentic, true, and correct to where it's got the mishaps that the factory had.
Right, the overspray.
Yeah. Or you can overdo it and make them fit better and, glass smooth and upgrade them like what we like to do. But in this case, it kind of split the difference. It still had some of the factory type orange peel texture of the paint, but nothing offensive. So it really just lent this image like, wow, if everybody was on their game at Ford that day, this was the best one ever made.
Yes. This was a Wednesday car where everybody was still focused throughout the week.
Yeah, this is the one that they were going to show to the Deuce for approval.
Right. We want to keep building this one, Deuce. What do you think?
Yeah, so it's a beautiful car. And he's going to tour it around and take it to some other shows and share it with other enthusiasts around the country. So that's really cool.
That is really cool. That was such a great story. And I love how he said, this is my first car show ever. And I don't know, everything else is going to pale in comparison now.
Yeah, I told him, don't get used to this because, he had a big crowd. He had the unveiling, and then he got an award also. I think Diego Rosenberg gave him his pick award of the car. And,
yeah, he did. That's right.
And I think Diego was involved in writing a book on Cobra Jets. So, I mean.
Oh, wow.
That was it's
a great pick then.
For sure. Yeah. And great recognition. So just, and everybody got it that, we play with these cars and the cars are great, but it's, really all about the people that you meet and interact with and the family members and the events that really make them special. Because you can have an awesome car sitting in a garage that nobody knows about, that, you don't know where it came from. And then it's just a piece of steel.
Right. It's just an appliance at that point.
Yeah. Not that one.
Not that one, no.
And not the whole lot of cars cars that's at the MCACN show. Every one of them has some kind of story. And that's kind of what you and I were doing, sniffing out some of these things. So we did shoot video, and I've got it about halfway put together right now.
Okay.
Of the David Sullivan
cool
reveal.
Right on.
And he was really gracious with his time, and it was...
He really was.
It was fun hanging out with him. Yeah. So we've been texting a little bit about... I'm keeping him well teased.
Nice.
When this thing is going to come out.
When's it going to come out, Kevin?
Yeah. So keep your eye on our V8 TV channel. Jump on YouTube and you'll find that. Or in Muscle Car of the Week. We're going to put it there too. And in fact, that Saturday night, you and I had 24-hour access again, being legit members of the media.
We are.
Yeah, for sure. So I did a little walk-around video that I recorded. I think it's about a half an hour, 25 minutes, something like that, and posted it. And it kind of ends at that car also. You can see a little bit of it there.
Cool.
Towards the end. And that's where the other feature videos that we've done. So there's going to be one on that red Buick, one on Sullivan's car. We did one on a 69 Chevelle 300 post-coupe car that Dan Vasic restored.
Dan Vasic, yeah.
Beautiful car. Silver, black gut, and all the tricks of the 300 post sedan. But it was also wearing SS 396 trim, which kind of made it unique because most of those post sedan cars were not SS 396 cars.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that was neat. What else did we shoot? We shot
the carbon fiber Daytona guy.
That's right, the carbon fiber Daytona guy.
Yeah.
It's a modern adaptation of a Daytona. So it's basically like a Hellcat Charger.
Right.
That was reskinned in carbon with
100% carbon with the nose and all that.
Yeah, and the spoiler on the back.
Yeah.
That was cool. And then that killer 68 Cobra Jet Mustang.
The 68 Cobra Jet Mustang.
Yeah, the white one.
Oh, the white one. Yes. How did I forget?
That's part of the effect of that show is you just see so much.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah, that just, oh my gosh, I brought it all back now. That was a cool car, man.
It was an amazing car. So it was a development car for the Cobra Jet Mustang program, which I think there was only 50 of them made.
Yeah, something like that.
And these were basically dedicated race cars from the factory. And the gentleman that owns it is the original, as I will say, civilian owner of the car, because it was owned by Ford.
Correct.
And they used that car to figure out a bunch of problems that they were having engineering those cars.
Right.
So he was an engineer.
Yeah, he worked for Ford.
Yeah. And was in the NVH department, assessing noise, vibration, and harshness, and got to know the car because they were working on it in his department. And eventually, that was one of the cars that they figured out, the Super Cobra Jet package, which added the oil cooler.
Right.
Because the regular Cobra Jet, they were running like 331 gears in them, and they were quick, but they wanted to run like 430 gears in these things.
Oh, boy.
And they were doing that, but they were spinning the RPM so high, they were heating up all the oil.
Sure.
And the cars would overheat. So if you look at this guy's car, and he's had it since then, since 68, there was all these holes drilled in the lower valance.
Under the hood.
And under the hood. And, what's that all about? Well, partially to make it lighter, but they were also trying to vent hot air out from under the hood. They were doing whatever they could to get this thing to run cool. And this is the first time I'd ever heard this, and it's an awesome trivia question. But one of the things they landed on for the production versions is an oil cooler. And by putting this oil cooler, it hangs over the front of the core support, and it brought that oil temperature down low enough to where they could run the 430 gears. And the 430 gear in the oil cooler and the manual transmission, I'm pretty sure the manual's part of it, becomes the Super Cobra Jet.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
I'll be darned.
But the trivia question there is that where did that oil cooler come from?
Oh, right. Oh, that's right. He did say that. Oh, my gosh. It was a tractor, wasn't it?
A cement mixer.
Cement mixer. That's right. Cement mixer.
And so when you're doing, and Ford knew that this was going to be a super limited production car, the Mustang anyway, and they're landing on the fact that they need to come up with an oil cooler, but they weren't going to engineer and develop one and run it through manufacturing and all that stuff, because this is we need these fast. So somebody walked past the cement mixer and saw this thing and said, hey, that'll fit. And it's got fittings on it, and it bolts right to the core support. So that Ford just bought them from that company that made them for that cement mixer business. And any of the Super Cobra Jet, Mustangs, Torinos, anything that has that cooler on it. And that's the first thing you look for if you go to a car show and somebody says they have a Super Cobra Jet, whatever, just look for that oil cooler right in the front. It's real easy to spot. And it came from a cement mixer.
Cement mixer of all places.
And we heard this from the guy that, helped develop it.
Who the legit guy. Mm-hmm. He was there. So
we know there's some truth to it.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, that was a cool car. I remember, who was it that was telling us we have to go talk to that guy?
Ryan Weaver.
Ryan Weaver. Yeah, right. Our good buddy Ryan Weaver. So you have to find him. You have to talk to him. Super great story about this car. We went over to find him.
Well, he didn't tell us what the story was.
No, he wouldn't tell us what the story was. So, but we went over to the car. Unfortunately, the owner wasn't around, and we're looking at this white Mustang with the hood down, and it has a hood scoop on the hood, and we're like, I don't know what. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm like, there wasn't really a whole lot interesting about it on the outside. It was the plain white-looking Mustang.
Well, that was the thing with those Cobra Jet Mustangs in '68. I think it might technically be a 68 and a half. Anyways, the 68 Cobra Jets is that they were all destined to be race cars. Mm-hmm. So they made them plain Jane white so that you could label them up with
whatever you had to do,
your dealer logo and sponsorship stuff. And they got white steel wheels, and they're nothing to look at, but they were very, very fast.
Yeah. Right. And the story was really, really cool, which really transformed that car into something really special.
Yeah. I mean, and we had heard also from my only friend, Charlie Lillard. So he was asking us, what are we shooting that weekend? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to shoot that 68 Cobra Jet. And he's like, oh yeah, the one with the real great story. I'm like, yeah, what is it? And he's like, well, you'll go find out.
Yeah.
So people were telling us that there was a story, but not what it was. So we got to hear it firsthand from the owner.
Yeah.
And that car, a couple more items. How many miles did it have on it?
Oh, I don't remember.
6,000 maybe?
Maybe.
Somewhere in that area?
Yep.
About. And that was quarter mile at a time, and
sure,
just mild
test miles.
Test miles. Right, test miles. But did you know that him and his wife drove that to the MCACN show?
They did?
Yeah.
Shut up. Yeah. I missed that.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
They drove it to the show.
That's awesome.
That's risky.
It's risky as all get out.
End of November in Chicago to be out driving that car.
Yeah. It's gutsy.
And I think
that's hot rodding, though.
I think they came from Michigan. I think they still live up there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it was cool. And if the problem with that show is that it's too short.
It is. I mean, you need every bit of those 2 days to see whatever you can see there. I mean, if it was 3 days, that would be better.
Well, I mean, you and I got to spend, and that's one of the perks of bringing cameras and doing interviews, is you get some focused time with the owners to hear these stories. And unfortunately, the general public doesn't usually get that. Mm-hmm. They do a lot, and that show's good for it. Mm. But there's only so many hours in the day.
Right.
So if you were to get the whole hour-long story on each car.
Oh yeah, you get
500 hours worth of time.
Yeah.
You just can't do it. But every car's got that deep of a story that's there, which is really what makes it so awesome.
For sure.
So then we also shot, what else? There was more. You'll have to tune into the VATV channel and find out our muscle car of the week. So much going on right now that it's kind of crazy to keep up with it all.
Yeah, there was. I think we got six cars we shot.
Yeah, at least. And then there was, some of the other unveilings.
Correct.
Which were amazing. Just to see these cars that are being unveiled for the first time to the general public after a restoration. And I don't remember if any of them were barn finds this year from previous years. That happens where they drag something out of a barn and it's all ratty, and then it goes through a restoration and is shown to the public for the first time at the show. So you get to see the before and after, which is cool. But just some really great stuff and some fun times and great people. It's always fun to see the friends. And
speaking of barn finds, your almost 99% dream car was in the barn finds at Saturn Yellow GSX, but it was an automatic.
It was an automatic, but it was a stage one automatic.
Stage one,
car. Yeah, in Saturn Yellow. Yes, there was a lot of 99% dream cars there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of 100% dream cars there.
For sure.
Absolutely. And the barn find section, again, was loaded with stuff that...
there was overflow in the barn find section.
Yes, and there was a 66 Wildcat 425 4-speed convertible in the barn find section.
Right.
And at that point, I think it was one of 50 or something made by 66.
Hope we see that one next year all gussied up.
Somebody's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh.
That was in need of a lot.
I mean, not just in need of a lot, but it's going to be so difficult to find a lot of these parts. Unless, I mean, you have to be really deep into the Buick community to find some of this stuff. You're not going to go to Summit and find a lot of stuff for it.
No. But I think what's interesting is a lot of times those cars were cared for. Mm-hmm. You know, they were garage kept. And so you'll find like really low mile parts cars out there. And it's like the Cadillacs. You see Cadillacs from the 60s and 70s that seem to just turn up. And, you know, one came up the other day. It was a blue 73 four-door Cadillac sedan DeVille. And it was the same color combination as one that we had when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
Like in the late 70s or 78 or so, my dad came home with this car. And it was, 5 or 6 years old at the time. Mm-hmm. Midnight blue, white vinyl top, that funky paisley patterned cloth Cadillac upholstery.
Yeah.
With fleur-de-lis on the thing. And, it had a 472 under the hood. And we had it for a few years, and it started to get rusty, and we sold it. My dad traded it, I think, for a car. But every once in a while, you'll see one of those things with like 20,000 miles on it. And it's because the original owner was 90 when they bought it.
Right.
And it got parked in the garage. And it's not a barn find because it seems to me like the barn thing is oftentimes people just stash a car.
Right.
But a lot of these Cadillacs and to a lesser extent Oldsmobiles and some of the Buicks, they were just people's cars that they were retirement vehicles. They didn't drive them very much, and they were dealer serviced. And so if you're gonna try to restore something like that's the way to do it, is try to find a parts car that was
well cared for and well loved.
Yeah.
Or if you find one that's that nice, use your car as a parts car for it.
Well, and there's that whole thing though about trashing that authenticity. You don't want to, if you've got a VIN and a trim tag that says that yours is significant,
right?
Then you take the parts off the other one.
Yeah, it's a good point.
But there's all these different strategies, and about approaching a restoration. In fact, we were talking about a little bit earlier how some people say just tear into the car and then buy the parts and put it together. And then there's other people who say hoard and accumulate a bunch of parts and then dive into it so you got something to work with. And I think today, because of what we went through with supply line challenges and stuff, especially parts that don't go stale, like sheet metal, body panels and stuff. I'm going to say buy them now and hold on to them until you can get to work on the car.
Well, that's kind of our MO here at the at the V8 Speed and Resto shop.
Wherever it is you work.
I just channeled my inner Bill. Sorry, Bill.
We have a technician who reverses our shop name.
So anyway, I mean, that's kind of what our MO is at the V8 Speed and Resto shop when we have a car. Even if we don't have possession of the car, if the customer committed and wants us to do his build, we start accumulating those parts. So when the car comes in, boom, we can hit the ground running.
Yeah, and that dynamic is a little different for a shop, I think, than a person, an individual. Because as a shop, yes, I want that car in and I want it worked on as soon as possible.
Sure.
And I know that if I'm bringing it to a shop to have it restored, that we're going to get a bunch of parts and we're going to do a lot of work. But a lot of times, we're talking about your GTO as an example, how there's this trepidation. It's like, do I do this car or do I just keep driving it?
Yeah.
And how do I make that decision? And, you were saying how if you peel the vinyl top off your 67 GTO, there's going to be rust under there. And then, one thing.
We know there's rust under there.
Right.
You can see the bubbles through the vinyl top.
And one thing leads to another, and, next thing you know. But in that case, I would say just assume that you're going to replace replace all that.
Right.
As opposed to many people who peel back a little layer and hope. And they go, oh, I hope there's a... And then, oh, man, it is connected to the next panel. Now I got to buy one of those.
Right.
But as I was telling you before, if that was mine, I would start with a roof skin. I would buy a roof skin, and I would get quarter panels, and I would get a rear trunk filler panel, and I would get a tail pan, and I would get trunk floor, and I would get inner and outer wheelhouses. And it's a lot of stuff, right? It's a lot of parts and a lot of money, but those parts don't go stale. So you can store them. And like my buddy Rick, what he does is he made a holiday list and gave it to his family. And for each gifting holiday, they bought him a piece of steel.
That's great.
For his Chevelle. So here's a quarter panel, from courtesy of your daughter and, your wife. And then, your father bought you a trunk floor one year, and he has been stashing those parts over a long period so that whenever he gets to the point of, I'm going to do this car, he's got those big pieces to start with. Now, I would not advise getting like upholstery and interior parts and storing those long term, just because critters like chewing on that kind of stuff. And I had some seat cushions for my Galaxy stored in my garage upstairs here, and the summer heat had
just ravaged them, didn't it?
Yeah, and it wasn't the UV of the sun. They didn't see sunlight, so they didn't like crumble, but they got real stiff, and they heat cycled too much. It got kind of yellow and rigid, and we ended up not using them. They were worn out before we got to use them.
That's a bummer.
That is.
Yeah.
And then there's another dimension of parts, and that is, will they be outdated by the time, so tires, you don't want to sit on tires because they'll be stale and you can't use them after a certain period of time. But like, if you're going to upgrade the car and do electronic fuel injection or modern audio or electronic ignition, and you buy those parts today and you're going to install them in 4 years, maybe, or 3 or 10, who knows?
Right.
Are they going to be even worth putting in at that point because something newer, better is going to be?
Yeah, something more killer. Yeah.
So all these different things to consider, but I still think bumpers and don't
like
do
hard parts.
Yeah, don't do anything soft. Don't do rubber trim, weather strip, like lens gaskets. Don't do that stuff. But the lenses themselves, chrome trim.
Right.
Yeah. So, there's also the people, and I've done it myself too, of just flying blind and just
doing it, man.
I'm just going to run in there and take it all apart.
Good Lord.
Let's just see what happens.
I'm so guilty of that. So guilty. That's why my GTO sat on jack stands for 7 years, because I just tore it apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then now what?
Sometimes you got to do that. I don't even know if I shared this with you, but I recently learned that we look back and say what kind of a lunkhead we were as youth. That first 1970 Buick Riviera that I had, it was red with the white gut and the white buckets, and I knew it was a special color because in the brochure that red was not listed in the Riviera. So special order, right? And actually talking to this gentleman with that red Wildcat at the MCACN show, he was telling me that car it sat in a dealer showroom for a year almost because it was ordered as a demo. It was ordered to get people in the door. That's why it was bright white, interior, bright red. Well, so was my 70 Riv. It was built in like March or so, February, and it didn't sell until October, till Halloween. So it was in this Buick dealer a whole selling season.
Wow.
Right? Because it was eye candy. Sure. It was neat and it brought people in off the street. And I knew that there was a caveat that said that color was a 70 Buick color. I think it's called fire red, flame red or fire red. And you could get it on a GS and other cars, just not the Riv. So I run this Facebook group of 1970 Buick Rivieras, and somebody posted data from Buick that had the production numbers of colors. Yeah. There was 38 of those built.
Oh, man.
And I ruined it.
And you ruined it.
Yeah.
You knucklehead.
My circumstance did not allow me to finish putting that car back together, and I had to get rid of it, and I think it got scrapped.
No, that hurts.
And that explains that dealer demo concept explains why it had power everything, power driver's seat, trunk release, windows,
all the bells and whistles,
8-track, AC,
the full console.
No, that actually had the shorty.
The shorty console. Okay.
Yeah, but one of 38. So the rarest car I ever owned, I just completely ruined.
That's what keeps them rare because of people like us.
It's rarer now.
It's rarer now, yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, brother. That's disappointing.
I'm trying not to dwell on it. But.
Yeah. I've done the same thing. I've ruined my 66 Le Mans that I had. Was just the nicest car I'd ever owned. I mean, it was red, black interior, Sprint 6, overhead cam, 4-barrel carburetor, 3-speed on the floor, center console. Just a no power brakes, no power steering, no air conditioning. Just a great driving 6-cylinder. Had good power for a 6-cylinder. Had about 200 horsepower. The secondaries would kick in. It would really send it off, and it was such a sweet car. And I just beat the tarnation out of it and just wrecked it, just ruined it. I blew the engine in it. Never got it to run right again after rebuilding it. Ended up having to just practically give it away. My dad had it towed back. This is when I was in the Air Force. My dad had it towed back from the Air Force base to his house in Texas. And there it sat for a year or so, and he got tired of looking at it. Says, "You got to do something about this car. You got to fix it or get rid of it."
That was it.
Said, "Dang it, sell it."
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just didn't have it at the time to do it. And that was my thing too. I was moving to California, and I had to get it out of my parents' garage. And,
yep.
Yeah. Well.
Oh boy, if I could do it over again.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. But it's all good. It all comes around. It makes you appreciate the other ones.
It does. It does.
You know what else people appreciate is our riveting trivia questions.
The master of the segue strikes again.
Yeah, not the one with 2 wheels.
No, absolutely not.
All right. What do we got?
All right. So I asked you, let me bring the question up. What was the first car to break the 200 mile per hour barrier in NASCAR? And for the bonus, I asked who the driver was. And you by golly, you got it. 1969 Charger Daytona, sir. 200 mile an hour. The actual name of the car, the designator, was DC-93, which wasn't part of the question, but I thought was interesting. The driver, unfortunately, was not Junior Johnson. It was Buddy Baker.
It was Buddy Baker.
It was Buddy Baker. And but that was just the bonus, but you get full credit for the correct answer. So congratulations.
Right on. Well, yeah. Yay me. Well, that's cool. So the question that I asked you, if I can remember properly, was in what year did laminated safety glass become required in the United States? And the answer that you gave me was of course 1967.
And I know that was way later.
It was a little later. Well, I mean, if you knew it was later,
you could have guessed earlier. I just couldn't zero in on a year.
Yeah.
So I picked the easy one.
Well, the correct answer is
What?
1937.
37? Oh, man. Wow, I was way off. Holy
30
cats.
years. Yeah, 30 years. 1937 was when they mandated the use of the laminated safety glass in American cars, and we're all safer for it.
Yes, we are. We are. Thank you, federal government.
This time, yeah.
Thank you that you are here to help.
Yes, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. All right. Well, we've blathered on enough about the MCACN show, but I really invite people to go see that for themselves in person.
100%.
We can talk about it and share videos and photographs, but it is not the same. So start making your travel plans now, because the 24 show might have something really interesting and personal to us on this program.
Really?
Yes.
You know who else is going to be at the MCACN show? Our official V8 radio statistician, Mr. Yardley, is going to be there.
Right on.
He has committed.
Well, so now you can get his autograph, too.
Yeah, there we go.
It's all, yeah, see? It's going to be a big show. So we encourage to see you there. And that's pretty much all I got, because we got to hightail it out the door here to go to our second holiday party.
Second?
Yeah, we had our company holiday lunchtime party the other day, and tonight is the actual big one that he came down for.
Right on.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It is.
It's very festive. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, leave us a review. Tell us what it was you liked about it, or maybe just hit a bunch of stars. Either way, and subscribe, because then, like a magical thing, the next episode it'll just knock on your door. It'll just show up. Saying,
Here I am.
Feed me.
Anyone home?
That's it. So for Mr. Mike Q-Ball Clarke, I'm Kevin Oeste. Thanks for tuning into the V8 Radio Podcast as we remind you to keep it safe and keep the shiny side up, and we will talk to you next time on V8 Radio.